Hi, my name is David Lee, and I have a clival chordoma, which is at the base of my skull, which was removed in 2020. I had I had two surgeries at the National Hospital for Neurology and Neurosurgery, endonasally up the nose, and those did not complete the margin or get enough margin to radiate. So I had a third surgery at the end of the year, a craniotomy on my right-hand side that was able to get enough margin. And in 2020-21, I had 3 months or almost 3 months of proton beam radiation at the Christie Hospital in Manchester. So I'm luckily 2 years stable and happy to help out in any way that I can. I first noticed something was wrong when I started having some strange double vision that was on and off. It was right after the beginning of the new year. I thought I had too many things to drink over the New Year's, or I was looking at too many screens. I felt a little dizzy at times, but it was mainly the double vision that didn't go away. It felt like the world was split in two at times. It mainly affected me when I was walking or when I looked at screens. And luckily, after a week of on and off double vision, my colleagues urged me to get it checked out, and I popped into Specsavers. And that's where my journey began, at the Specsavers, after they couldn't find anything wrong with my vision. So they sent me off to A&E at the Moorfield Eye Hospital. And after further examination there, they couldn't find anything, so they sent me off to the Royal London Hospital to get a CT scan. And luckily, they did urge me to stay that night through 14 hours of waiting and 6 vials of blood and 2 CT scans later. They actually didn't find anything and sent me home. The next day I got a call, and that's when I was told to come back in, and that's when I was told that I had a lesion on the base of my skull pushing against my pituitary gland, and that was likely causing the double vision. And that's what led me to the sarcoma pathway and started the journey to get the 3 surgeries and proton beam radiation.
The Friday night was quite traumatic through A&E and scans and so on. But when they sent us home, we kind of thought, oh, it must just be like I don't know, we didn't really know what a lesion was, like a mouth. Is that a mouth ulcer? Or is it just like something on your sinus that was causing double vision? We relaxed, and then the phone call, and they said, yes, we found a lesion, can you come in? Again, we still were thinking it wasn't, it's a lesion, it's a sore, it'll go away with some antibiotics or something. But I think when we finally sat down with the neurosurgeon and he explained what it was, and we realized, oh, actually it's cancer. I think both of us were in a state of shock, really. I mean, Dave, clearly more so. I think from my perspective, I kind of go into automatic response. It's a bit like first aid type stuff. It's like I don't like needles and blood, but if my nephew dropped a carving knife on his foot one time, and my brother fainted, and I was the one trying to get the bandages, and you kind of go into automatic response, and
you go into warrior mode, and what do we need to do next?
Yeah.
After that shock, I guess. I had 3 surgeries, 2 endonasally, so up the nose and into the back of the skull, and a craniotomy. I think the first surgery was very, very new. I'd never been in a hospital before, and never been admitted before to anything. So it was all very new, and I think the first surgery was the toughest. You don't know if you're going to wake up, if you're going to be the same person that you were. So that was a really hard first experience, and it was right at the beginning of the COVID pandemic. So I'm very fortunate that I got in before the hospital shut down, and I was actually let out early because we had a suspected case on the ward. So the first surgery, I think, felt very hard. The second surgery was a redo surgery, and that's a little bit easier to go through because you know what to expect. The third surgery was devastating. I think we didn't realize how long of a marathon this was going to be, and this was not expected. I mean, I think when you hear the word craniotomy, it just conjures up science fiction, and it was a hard one to take. But again, once you kind of get over the shock, it's back into warrior mode, and I'm very glad that we chose to go down that route, because that got enough margin to be referred on to the proton radiation board, and luckily I was accepted and went to that program the end of 2020. So we had to uproot ourselves and spend 3 months in Manchester during lockdown when nothing was open in the middle of winter. So it wasn't a great winter, but it was a really great, lovely staff at the Christie took care of us, and we were able to get the radiation. Luckily, nothing was stopped during that time, even though COVID was raging throughout the country. Radiation, luckily, doesn't really affect you. That it's invisible. It's an amazing technology, and it's helped extend my life. But you feel the after effects later, and you don't really notice that up front. I got a little bit dizzy, I got a little bit nauseous, but it wasn't as bad, where it takes its toll over time, whereas surgeries affect you up front and then you heal and get better over time. So I think there are still symptoms that I deal with today that come out of that radiation. So I think they both have had their effects, but we're getting through it and still managing to live life. And luckily I have a partner that's been there throughout. I mean, it was a long year, and going through it during COVID time was also just made it extra tough. Also going through it during COVID time, I think a lot of people probably experienced the same kind of ups and downs that we went through, and it made it easier to relate, even though we couldn't see them or have anybody in the room with us. And actually, after the first surgery, everything became very difficult because you couldn't have visitors in the hospital. So I think, surgery number 2, while it was a little bit easier to deal with, it was harder in that we were separated. I think it was harder for you, just not knowing what was going on.
I think because the hospital had split into the COVID and non-COVID, you went from surgery into, rather than recovery room for 2 hours, it was ICU for 24 hours. And trying to get the status or the phone call that it's everything okay, and you can't hear. I did hear it back eventually, but there's that 10 hours of waiting, and that was really hard.
And actually, after my craniotomy, I had seizures that were likely caused by the surgery. And I was on the ward when my registrar and CNS came by, and I started having seizures. And I was texting Ian at that time that I think I'm having seizures, and next thing I know, I just kind of passed out, and next thing I knew, I was in the CT scan, and the nurses, when I came back to the ward, said that I had them worried. I'd had several seizures on the floor. Luckily, they treated me right away, but nobody was there to kind of give you the news, and all you had was, I'm having seizures, and everything went quiet. So that was very tough.
I think from the first surgery, we were always expecting to go to a proton beam. So, you know, obviously the second surgery and the third surgery was kind of bad news, but I think we always knew we wanted to go down that path. It's like, you just keep, tenacious, you keep going for it. And I think we were walking to the supermarket when Dave got the phone call that he had enough margin had been accepted for the PBT, and it's like being so happy that we're going for radiation. That was quite a strange, memorable moment.
Yeah, I didn't know you could get so happy going for radiation, but it was a milestone moment, and I think after going through so many surgeries, finally getting to that next step was really big for us. I think the advice that I would give is that you need to really take it one step at a time, and there are so many different ups and downs in the journey that we tried to focus on a lot of different things, and you kind of your mind goes in a lot of different places. And I think what we learned is that you really just have to take the next step and focus on that, and not try to get ahead of yourselves, not try to learn everything that you can, which you can't, because there's not a lot of information out there on our particular cancers. So one step at a time, focus on getting yourself ready for whatever the next thing is, and going from there.
I think also you have to trust your providers, your surgeons and your specialists and so on, because you can try. We spent plenty of time Googling and in university bookshops looking at brain surgery, crazy things like that, and you realise, why am I doing this? So trust your carers, but also just if you think you should have had an appointment and you haven't got one, then push for it, phone up and send emails. The other thing, I think, as a carer or family member supporting someone, obviously you support them, but I think the other thing I've realised is you need to actually give them space on their own, because yes, you're very close and you support, but it's not you. You don't know how they feel. Which is why I think that some of the counselling that you do is so important, because actually unless you've been through it yourself, it's really hard to empathise and get that understanding.
But at the same time, I think it's also giving you space too. I know that it takes a lot out of carers as well, and it's just giving each other space and time to process. And I think another piece of advice that I would give is also make sure that you have an expert team around you, and that's and trusting your team, but also knowing that you have an expert team, especially for rare cancers where they don't see many patients. It's really important, and we're really fortunate that we had a pathway, at least, that got us to one of the best surgeons, at least, and best teams that deal with chordomas, and that's really, really important. Based on my experience, I think awareness is important, because there's so little information out there, and I knew very little about the resources that were available to me. And now that I know that there are resources available, I wish that somebody had told me to go to a website, or to give me a booklet, or to tell me something along the way. I've had excellent treatment and care. I haven't had excellent support from the NHS, and that's unfortunate, because I know it's there, and I know that there are great organizations, and there are groups, and there are places to go, but I had to find them. We had to find them ourselves, and I think that fortunately we landed in the right place. But I think there's so much misinformation out there. There's outdated information, especially for cancer cases where there aren't that many studies, or there aren't that many trials going on. So I think it's really important to get to the right resources and to be aware of the right resources, and to have that information delivered by the right teams. So for us, we were able to stumble through and kind of find the right places, but we're only finding out about them now. And I think it's really important, especially in the diagnostic, or it's very important, especially in the early phases of a diagnosis, when you're just not aware of anything and you're dealing with so much. I think that would have been really, really helpful for any patient going through any cancer.
And for carers as well. I mean, it's like you don't really hear when you do have your meetings with the doctors. You don't really take in half of what they're saying, and you take a pad in, planning to write down notes, and you come back and there's two little scrawls you can't understand. So I think you're right. The early stages, if we'd known about the BCRG and or chordoma foundation, that would have been a really helpful at that time.
I think the Bone Cancer Research Trust is doing some amazing stuff, trying to punch above its weight and really give a voice to all these smaller cancers that are rarer cancers that are underfunded and under-recognized. And I think it's really important to provide the community. I've really enjoyed meeting different people so far and looking forward to talking to more later today, but really love the work that you guys are doing.
It feels like a big family, which is great, and it's just welcoming. And I wasn't actually aware of what you did, and now so I can see, research trusts and clinical trials and patient advocacy, and really great. Very impressed.
And we're new to the BCRT family, so it's it's really great just to meet all different types of patients and to see what's going on. I'm being looked after by no less than 6 different specialists, so I know that I'm being looked after, but I'm dealing with some endocrine issues as well as some cognitive issues that were due to the radiation, but these were all risk factors that I knew were possibilities going into it. I was hoping they would happen later, but luckily they're all things that can be managed with some either medication or with other treatments. The long-term side effects have built up over time, and I think I've been made aware of this along the way. With surgery, there's always risk of a little bit of tinnitus. Luckily, my double vision was corrected after surgery number 1, and my main symptom going in was taken care of, but the longer-term side effects were really from the radiation and having multiple surgeries in the same area. So my pituitary gland was one of the casualties of getting so much radiation, and so now I'm dealing with some endocrine decline, which is mostly been caused by, or entirely been caused by the amount of radiation that I received. I'm being looked after, but there's a lot of smaller stuff that has to be dealt with, and that includes the endocrine. I'm having some cognitive issues based on the radiation, or because of the radiation. I've had some cognitive issues.
So for Dave, observing Dave, I guess through surgeries, he recovers well and quickly from those, but the proton was kind of an eye-opener, because it's something that's come on gradually. And I think obviously the thyroid and things, that's medication and treats, but I think the thing that is noticeable is the cognitive issues, or his lack of ability to maybe focus for long periods of time. before all this, he had a full-time job, 10 hours a day, meetings, conference calls, and now you have a chat with your mum or a 1 hour call with something else, and it's like it takes it out of you, and it's like you can't, trying to do 2 or 3 things in a day, and it's like it's tough. But I think in terms of supporting him, we're fortunate. He doesn't need to go back to full-time work, and we just take life as it comes, and we do the things we enjoy doing, and if he's not feeling like doing something, we don't do it. It's kind of as easy as that.
I had a full-time nurse, a full-time coffee maker, a full-time cook, which was great, and we were really fortunate that we could do it together, and move up to Manchester together. And
I mean, it does change your perspective on life and what and I think because it happened at the same time as COVID, I mean, it really brings it home as what's important to you, and friends and family is really important, and making the most of your time that you've got, doing the things that you enjoy and give you fulfillment.
Yeah, the parallel journeys of going through COVID and through chordoma, have really changed our perspective, and for me, it's allowed me to kind of think differently about how we want to live our lives. And we sold our apartment in New York and simplified our lives, and I think luckily we've been able to travel a little bit around Europe, which was one of the reasons to move to London, and we're just looking forward to living things a little bit, not just day by day, but I know that we don't know when things will change, or when I'm not going to feel better, or when something's going to come up, but I think we kind of take advantage of more things when we can. Not every day, but when we can.